Good evening, friends, fiends, and spooky supernatural beings. Welcome to A Bit Late. Tonight we are reading the lovely tale East of Sun and West of Moon, or East of the Sun and West of the Moon. It's a bit of a long one, so I have made a whole pot of tea. It's purple violet tea today, so kind of has some spring vibes, but it's so sweet. I love it. It's actually, well, it's not purple. Shockingly, it's just your regular golden tea color. Probably because I've added a lot of honey. Makes it taste really good. There's actually purple violets in it. You can see the flowers. I love it so much. It's one of my favorites. Like I said, I have a whole pot for tonight. So, I'm definitely comfy and cozy, and I hope you are as well. Settle into your blankets. You're gonna need them. It's a really cold tale tonight. Pillows too, in case you do fall asleep. Summon your animal familiars around you, particularly polar bears tonight. I think that is very appropriate. But I do hope you're having a wonderful evening and are ready for this adventure. So without further ado, follow me into East of the Sun and West of the Moon. Once on a time there was a poor husbandman who had so many children that he hadn't much either of food or of clothing to give them. Pretty children they all were, but the prettiest was the youngest daughter, who was so lovely there was no end to her loveliness. Of course she's the youngest. Pretty. So one day, 'twas on a Thursday evening late at the fall of the year. Very specific. The weather was so wild and rough outside, and it was so cruelly dark, and the rain fell and the wind blew, till the walls of the cottage shook again. There they all sat round the fire, busy with this thing and that. But just then, all at once, something gave 3 taps at the window pane. Then the father went out to see what was the matter, and when he got out of doors, what should he see but a big white bear. "Good evening to you," said the white bear. "The same to you," said the man. "Will you bring me your youngest daughter? If you will, I will make you as rich as you are now poor," said the bear. Well, the man would not be at all sorry to be so rich, but he still thought he must have a bit of a talk with his daughter first. Yeah, I would say so. So he went in and told them how there was a great white bear waiting outside, who had given his word to make them so rich if only he could have the youngest daughter. To eat? To be friends with? To save the world? The lassie said no outright. Cool. Nothing could get her to say anything else, so the man went out and settled it with the white bear that he should come again the next Thursday evening and get an answer. Because no, this Thursday means a potential yes next Thursday? Meantime, he talked his daughter over and kept on telling her all the riches they would get and how well off she would be herself. Will she, though? And so at last she thought better of it and washed her mended rags, made herself as smart as she could, and was ready to start. I can't say her packing gave her much trouble, so she didn't have much. Got it? Next Thursday evening the white bear came to fetch her, and she got upon his back with her bundle, and off they went. So when they had gone a bit of the way, the white bear said, "Are you afraid?" No, she wasn't. "Well, mind and hold tight to my shaggy coat, and then there's nothing to fear," said the bear. So she rode a long way till they came to a great steep hill. There on the face of it the white bear gave a knock, and a door opened, and they came into a castle where there were many rooms all lit up, rooms gleaming with silver and gold, and there too was a table ready laid, and it was all as grand could be. Then the white bear gave her a silver bell, and when she wanted anything, she was only to ring it, and she would get it at once. Well, after she had eaten and drunk and evening wore on, she got sleepy after her journey and thought she would like to go to bed. So she rang the bell. Instead of just going to sleep, she rings the bell. And she had scarce taken hold of it before she came into a chamber where there was a bed made, as fair and white as anyone would wish to sleep in, with the silken pillows and curtains and gold fringe. That sounds very comfortable. All that was in the room was gold or silver, but when she had gone to bed and put out the lights, a man came and laid himself alongside her. Cool, I don't know if she was expecting that. That's never good. Reminds me of the enchanted pig story, but at least they were kind of expecting each other's company at night. I don't know about this one. That man was the white bear who threw off his beast shape at night, but she never saw him, for he always came after she had put out the lights, and before the day dawned, he was up and off again. So things went on happily for a while, but at last she began to get silent and sorrowful, for there she went about all day alone, and she longed to go home to see her father and mother and brothers and sisters, just like Belle and the Beast. So one day when the white bear asked what it was she lacked, she said it was so dull and lonely there, and how she longed to go home to see her father and mother and brothers and sisters. And that was why she was so sad and sorrowful, because she couldn't get to them. Did she try the bell? Well, well, said the bear. Perhaps there's a cure for all this, but you must promise me one thing, not to talk alone with your mother. Really? But only when the rest are by to hear, for she'll take you by the hand and try to lead you into a room to talk alone. But you must mind and do not do that, else you'll bring bad luck on both of us. I wonder what Mother would say in a room alone with her daughter that would bring bad luck. Apparently Mother doesn't know best here. So one Sunday, again I do like how specific the story gets with which day of the week which events are happening on. Sunday, the white bear came and said, now they could get off and see her father and mother. Well, off they started, she sitting on his back, and they went far and long. At last they came to a grand house, and there her brothers and sisters were running about out of doors at play, and everything was so pretty, 'twas a joy to see. Quite a change, too. This is where your father and mother live now, said the white bear. But don't forget what I told you, else you'll make us both unlucky. No, bless her, she'd not forget. And when she had reached the house, the white bear turned about and left her. Then when she went in to see her father and mother, there was such joy there was no end to it. None of them thought they could thank her enough for all she had done for them. Now they had everything they wished, as good could be, and they all wanted to know how she got on where she lived. Well, she said it was very good to live where she did. She had all she wished. What she said beside, I don't know, but I don't think any of them had the right end of the stick, or that they got much out of her. But so in the afternoon, after they had done dinner, all happened as the white bear had said. Her mother wanted to talk to her alone in her bedroom, but she minded what the white bear had said and wouldn't go upstairs. I don't know about that, sometimes it's good to get your mother or parents' opinion or advice. Especially, I don't know if the white bear is being a little too controlling here. Doesn't sit right with me. Anyway, oh, what we have to talk about we'll keep, she said, and put her mother off. But somehow or other her mother got round to her at last, and she had to tell her the whole story. Really? So she said how every night when she had gone to bed, a man came and lay down beside her as soon as she had put out the light. Oh, that's all he did. Okay, cool, sure. And how she never saw him because he was always up and away before the morning dawned. And how she went about woeful and sorrowing, for she thought she would so like to see him. And how all day long she walked about there alone, and how dull and dreary and lonesome it was. So she opened up to her mom about her true feelings, but that's apparently bad. My, said her mother, it may well be a troll you slept with. Ugh. But now I'll teach you a lesson how to set eyes upon him. I'll give you a bit of candle, which you can carry home in your bosom. Perfect wallet, perfect keeping place. Just light that while he is asleep, but take care not to drop the tallow on him. Mother knows best. Uh-oh. Definitely have enchanted pig vibes. That's a really good story too if you haven't heard it. Yes, she took the candle and hid it in her bosom, and as night drew on, the white bear came and fetched her away. Why wouldn't she just ask to see his face? That's the thing. Communication in fairy tales is just always lacking. Obviously, she communicated well with her mother. She opened up and poured her heart and soul out to her. Poor girl was miserable. But If you want to see someone's true form, ask them, and if they're like, no, then, oh well. You don't get to see their true, I don't know, talk it out. The journey is long. You could talk about it on the way home. Anyway, they're on the long, long journey home, and when they had gone a bit of the way, the white bear asked if all hadn't happened as he had said. Well, she couldn't say it hadn't. Now mind, said he, if you have listened to your mother's advice, you have brought bad luck on us both, and then all that has passed between us will be as nothing. So something has happened between them? Fairy tales, when they get watered down, you don't get the juicy details. Darn it. That's what imagination's for, I guess? No, said she. She hadn't listened to her mother's advice. She hadn't acted on it, I suppose, but she did listen to it. So when she reached home and had gone to bed, it was the old story over again. There came a man and lay down beside her, but at dead of night, when she heard him slept, she got up and struck a light, lit on the candle, and let the light shine on him. And so she saw he was the loveliest prince one has ever set eyes on. And she fell so deep in love with him on the spot that she thought she couldn't live if she didn't give him a kiss then and there. Oh, flippin' that. And so she did, but as she kissed him, she dropped 3 hot drops of tallow on his shirt, and he woke up. "What have you done?" he cried. "Now you have made both of us unlucky. For had you held out only this 1 year, I had been freed. For I have a stepmother who has bewitched me, so that I am a white bear by day and a man by night. But now all ties are snapped between us. Now I must set off from you to her. She lives in a castle which stands east of the sun and west of the moon, and there too is a princess with a nose 3 ells long, and she is the wife I must have now." Sounds like a long nose, but if there was no restriction, I'm assuming, on telling your lady you're sharing a bed with about the curse and how don't look at me for a year. Also, I mean, God, it's all communication, truly. Wow. Unless it's an arrangement like Howl's Moving Castle where they can't explicitly talk about certain things. But it is not, to the best of my knowledge, that. Anyway, she wept and took it ill, but there was no help for it. Go he must. Then she asked if she mightn't go with him. No, she mightn't. Does her family get to keep all the jewels or the riches? Can she just go back home? I know she loves him now. Oh my gosh, because she looked at him, but... "Tell me the way then," she said. "I'll search you out. That surely I may get leave to do." Yes, she might do that, he said. But there was no way to that place. It lay east of the sun and west of the moon, and thither she'd never find her way. So next morning when she woke up, both prince and castle were gone. And then she lay on a little green patch in the midst of a gloomy thick wood, and by her side lay the same bundle of rags she brought with her from her old home. So when she had rubbed the sleep out of her eyes and wept till she was tired, she set out on her way and walked many, many days till she came to a lofty crag. Under it sat an old hag and played with a golden apple which she tossed about. Here the lassie asked if she knew the way to the prince who lived with his stepmother in the castle that lay east of the sun and west of the moon, and who was to marry the princess with a nose 3 ells long. Imagine just walking up to a stranger and explaining the whole story like that, just not, "Hey, do you know the castle east of sun and west moon, but here's the story. Where's the prince? He lives with his stepmom. Here's who he's planning on marrying, and here's how big her nose is." Like, what the heck? Also, who cares about how big her nose is? Whatever. So she relays all this to the old woman. "How do you come to know about him?" asked the old hag. "But maybe you are the lassie who ought to have had him." Yes, she was. I love how bold this story is. Yes, she was. So it's you, is it?" said the old hag. "Well, all I know about him is that he lives in the castle that lies east of the sun and west of the moon." Really? She told you that? "And thither you'll come, late or never. But still you may have the loan of my horse, and on him you can ride to my next neighbor. Maybe she'll be able to tell you, and when you get there, just give the horse a switch under the left ear and beg him to be off home. And stay, this gold apple you may take with you." So she got upon the horse and rode a long, long time till she came to another crag under which sat another old hag. I do love the rhyming. With a gold carding comb. Here the lassie asked if she knew the way to the castle that lay east of the sun and west of the moon. And she answered, like the first old hag, that she knew nothing about it except that it was east of the sun and west of the moon. "And thither you'll come, late or never, but you shall have the loan of my horse to my next neighbor. Maybe she'll tell you all about it. And when you get there, just switch the horse under the left ear and beg him to be off home." And this old hag gave her the golden carding comb. It might be she'd find some use for it, she said. So the lassie got up on the horse and rode a far, far way away, and a weary time. And so at last she came to another great crag under which sat another old hag, spinning with a golden spinning wheel. Here too she asked if she knew the way to the prince, and where the castle was that lay east of the sun and west of the moon. So it was the same thing over again. "Maybe it's you who ought to have had the prince," said the old hag. Yes, it was. And yes, we have been here before. I promise I didn't reread a paragraph. But she too didn't know the way a bit better than the other two. East of the sun and west of the moon it was, she knew, that was all. "And thither you'll come, late or never, but I'll lend you my horse, and then I think you'd best ride to the east wind and ask him. Maybe he knows those parts and can blow you thither. But when you get to him, you need only to give the horse a switch under the left ear and he'll trot home of himself." She's got some more information this time, thank goodness. And so, too, she gave her the gold spinning wheel. "Maybe you'll find a use for it," said the old hag. Then on she rode many, many days, a weary time, before she got to the east wind's house. But at last she did reach it, and then she asked for the east wind if he could tell her the way to the prince who dwelt east of the sun and west of the moon. Yes, the east wind had often heard tell of it, the prince and the castle, but he couldn't tell the way, for he had never blown so far. "But if you will go, I will go with you to my brother the west wind. Maybe he knows, for he is much stronger. So if you will just get on my back, I will carry you thither. A trail, never-ending story." Yes, she got on his back, and I should just think they went briskly along. Thank you, story narrator, for that. So when they got there, they went into the west wind's house, and the east wind said that the lassie he had brought was the one who ought to have had the prince who lived in the castle east of the sun and west of the moon. And so she had set out to seek him, and how he had come with her and would be glad to know if the west wind knew how to get to the castle. "Nay," said the west wind, "so far I've never blown, but if you will, I'll go with you to our brother the south wind, for he is much stronger than either of us, and he has flapped his wings far and wide. Maybe he'll tell you. You can get on my back and I'll carry you to him." So is she riding two winds right now? That is so cool. Yes, she got on his back, and so they traveled to the south wind, and weren't so very long on the way, I should think. Right, because you got double winds. When they got there, the west wind asked him if he could tell her the way to the castle that lay east of the sun and west of the moon, for it was she who ought to have had the prince who lived there. So does every magical being in the world know that the prince was cursed and that he was doomed to marry a princess he didn't want to, and that this is the woman who should be with him? Like, that's just common knowledge among all these beings. Seems weird that the mortals wouldn't have been into that or known about it. Anyway, the winds are telling the new wind, the south wind. "You don't say so. That's she, is it?" said the south wind. "Well, I have blustered about in most places in my time, but so far I have never blown. But if you will, I'll take you to my brother the north wind. He is the oldest and strongest of the whole lot of us. And if he doesn't know where it is, you'll never find anyone in the world to tell you. You can get on my back, and I'll carry you thither." Yes, she got on his back, and away they went at his house at a fine rate. And this time, too, she wasn't long on her way. So when they got to the North Wind's house, he was so wild and cross, cold puffs came from him a long way off. "Blast you both, what do you want?" he roared out to them ever so far off, so that it struck them with an icy shiver. "Well," said the South Wind, "you needn't be so foul-mouthed, for here am I, your brother, the South Wind, and here is the lassie who ought to have had the prince who dwells in the castle that lies east of the sun and west of the moon. And now she wants to ask you if ever you were there, and can tell her the way, for she would be so glad to find him again." "Yes, I know well enough where it is," said the North Wind. "Once in my life I blew an aspen leaf thither, but I was so tired I couldn't blow a puff for ever so many days after. But if you really wish to go thither and aren't afraid to come along with me, I'll take you on my back and see if I can blow you thither." I wonder if it's the same North Wind that's brought the tree that never grew up song to the stars. I mean, if he blew an aspen leaf, maybe it was an aspen tree that was singing. We never found out if it was deciduous or not. It's just that it was old. It's old as time. Anyway, sorry, another story, another time. So the North Wind has agreed to take her. So, yes, with all her heart, she must go and would get thither if it were possible in any way. And as for fear, however madly he went, she wouldn't be afraid at all. "Very well then," said the North Wind, "but you must sleep here tonight, for we must have the whole day before us if we were to get thither at all." Early the next morning, the North Wind woke her and puffed himself up and blew himself out and made himself so stout and big 'twas gruesome to look at, and so off they went higher through the air as if they would never stop till they got to the world's end. Down here below there was such a storm, it threw down long tracts of wood and many houses, and when it swept over the great seas, ships foundered by hundreds. So for her journey of love, she is destroying ships and people and houses. Got it. Cool, cool. That balances out, I'm sure. I'm not sure. That doesn't make sense. So they tore on and on. No one can believe how far they went. Believe it. And all the while they still went over the sea, and the North Wind got more and more weary, and so out of breath he could scarce bring out a puff, and his wings drooped and drooped, till at last he sunk so low that the crests of the waves dashed over his heels. "Are you afraid?" said the North Wind. No, she wasn't. But they weren't very far from land, and the North Wind had still so much strength left in him that he managed to throw her up onto the shore under the windows of the castle which lay east of the sun and west of the moon. They made it. I didn't know they made it, but they made it. They're here. But then he was so weak and worn out, he had to stay there and rest many days before he could get home again. And the ships were safe on the sea for those few days. Next morning. But why would you wait till the next morning? Just go in when you get there, right? Like, the ladies already said you'd be late, but just don't make it later. Don't be later. Next morning, the lassie sat down under the castle window and began to play with the golden apple. That's your big plan? Not go to the door and be like, "I'm here, honey"? So she's sitting outside the window. She hasn't gone in yet. She must be freezing. I don't know what she ate. It's probably not important. Playing with the golden apple, and the first person she saw was the long nose who was to have the prince. That's terrible. "What do you want for your gold apple, lassie?" said the long nose, and threw open the window. "It's not for sale for gold or money," said the lassie. "If it's not for sale for gold or money, then what is it you will sell it for? You may name your own price," said the princess. "Well, if I may get to the prince who lives here and be with him tonight, you shall have it," said the lassie whom the North Wind had brought. Yes, she might. That could be done. So the princess got the gold apple, but when the lassie came up to the prince's bedroom at night, he was fast asleep. Ah, nuts. Bummer. Should have had a better plan. She called him and shook him, and between whiles she wept sore. But all she could do, she couldn't wake him up. This sounds like another fairy tale we've read. Also with 3 women helping a princess on her way to save a prince from slumber. It's called Fairer Than a Fairy, and you can check it out here, or after this one. Probably want to find out how this one ends first. So she's trying and she's trying, and she cannot wake this prince up. Next morning, as soon as day broke, came the princess with the long nose and drove her out again. So the dude just sleeps and everyone else in the castle's up, and the princess is like, get out of my fiance's room? I don't know. Fairy tales are fun. So in the daytime, she sat down under the castle windows and began to card with her carding comb. But began to card what? Also pick a better spot, otherwise just the princess is gonna see you, girl. And the same thing happened. The princess, of course, asked what she wanted for it, and she said it wasn't for sale for gold or money, but if she might get leave to go up to the prince and be with him that night, the princess should have it. But when she went up and found him fast asleep again, and all she called and all she shook and wept and prayed, she couldn't get life into him. Oh, that's new. Was he not living? And as soon as the first gray peep of dawn came, then came the princess and chased her out again. So in the daytime, the lassie sat down under the castle window and began to spin with her golden spinning wheel. What did she spin? Did she bring wool with her? Did she comb card the wool yesterday? Where did these sheep come from? Sorry. And that too the princess wanted to have. So she threw up the window and asked what she wanted for it. The lassie said, as she had said twice before, that it wasn't for sale for gold or money, but if she might go up to the prince who was there and be alone with him that night, she might have it. And maybe put it in the provision that the princess isn't to put a sleeping potion in his drink or something. I don't know. Seems really fishy. Yes, she might do that, and welcome. But now you must know that there were some other folks who had been carried off thither, and as they sat in their room, which was next to the prince, they had heard how a woman had been in there and wept and prayed and called to him 2 nights running. I'm sure they thought it was scandalous, and they told that to the prince. So, but what if they didn't know the prince was sleeping and they assumed he was awake and they thought the woman was doing some fun stuff with him, and then they were like, by the way, Prince, we know what you're up to, or were they like, Prince, we're concerned about you? A little confusing as to their motives. Anyway, that evening when the princess came in with her sleepy drink, I knew it. I knew she was doing that to him. Sorry, I didn't peek ahead in the story, but I knew I wanted to read it. I knew it. The prince made as if he drank, but threw it over his shoulder. Real smooth, Princey Pooh, real smooth. For he could guess it was a sleepy drink, finally. So when the lassie came in, she found the prince wide awake, and she told him the whole story of how she had come thither. Ah, said the prince, you've come in the very nick of time, for tomorrow is to be our wedding day. But now I won't have the princess, and you are the only woman in the world who can set me free. I'll say I want to see what my wife is fit for, and beg her to wash the shirt which has 3 spots of tallow on it. She'll say yes, for she doesn't know 'tis you who put them there. But 'tis only work for certain folk, and not much for a pack of trolls. And so I'll say that I won't have any other for my bride than the woman who can wash them out, and ask you to do it. So there was great joy and love between them all that night. Wow. But the next day, when the wedding was to be, the prince said, first of all, I'd like to see what my bride is fit for. Yes, said the stepmother with all her heart. Well, said the prince, I've got a fine shirt which I'd like for my wedding shirt, but somehow or other it has got 3 spots of tallow on it, which I must have washed out, and I've sworn never to take any other bride than the woman who's able to do that. If she can't, she's not worth having. You bring this up on the wedding day, though? Oh, man. Fairy tales. Well, that was no great thing, they said, and so they agreed. And when she with the long nose began to wash as hard as she could, but the more she rubbed and scrubbed, the bigger the spots grew. "Ah," said the old hag, her mother, "you can't wash, let me try." But she hadn't long taken the shirt in hand before it got far worse than ever, and with all her rubbing and wringing and scrubbing, the spots grew bigger and blacker and darker and uglier was the shirt. Then all the other trolls, I didn't realize we were dealing with trolls, began to wash, but the longer it lasted, the blacker and uglier the shirt grew, till at last it was black all over as if it had been up a chimney. "Ah," said the prince, "you're none of you worth a straw, you can't wash." Why, there, outside, sits a beggar lassie. Wow, she's the love of your life and that's how you treat her and call her? I'll be bound she knows how to wash better than the whole lot of you. "Come in, lassie," he shouted. Well, she came in. "Can you wash this shirt clean, lassie you?" said he. "I don't know," she said, "but I think I can." And almost before she had taken it and dipped it in the water, it was white as driven snow, and whiter still. "How?" "Yes, you are the lassie for me," said the prince. And at that, the old hag flew into such a rage she burst on the spot. What? Fairy tales. And the princess with the long nose after her, and the whole pack of trolls after her. At least I've never heard a word about them since. As for the prince and princess, they set free all the poor folk who had been carried off and shut up there. And they took with them all the silver and gold and flitted far away as they could from the castle that lay east of the sun and west of the moon. And on that flittery note, the end. Dear friends and fiends, I hope you enjoyed tonight's story. It took us an awful long time to get to where we were going, and I must say that is not the reception I was expecting for the girl who literally traveled all over the world into the heavens for this guy. Honestly, if you like stories like this, there's a few on the channel definitely you should check out, The Enchanted Pig being one of them. And there's no close scrubbing in that one. But yeah, I have very mixed feelings about this. I do think it would be so cool to visit a palace east of the sun and west of the moon, wherever that may be. I have a feeling it's by Never Never Land. It would be a pretty cool place to visit. But I hope you visit it maybe in your dreams tonight. That would be really cool. Let me know what you see there, what it's like. I didn't realize it was owned by trolls who just kidnap people and somehow get them there. But hey, fairy tales, you gotta love them. They obviously don't have a lot of details, and that's okay. That's when we get to overanalyze them later in the tellings. But I hope you're having a wonderful day or night, and that your tea has lasted you through this whole story, and that you're all snuggled in and tucked in and very comfy and cozy and not worried about anything. And if you still have time and energy, enjoy another story. But now off to sleep and dream what you will, or stay a while and enjoy another tale. Whichever you choose, I'll speak to you again. And until then, stay spooky, my friends. Good night.